If you go on a diet and lose weight, where exactly does all that body fat go? Let's talk about that. How's it going, guys? My name is Richie Kirwan, and today we're going to talk about something that I'm surprised we've never actually spoken about before. We obviously talk a lot about nutrition on this channel, and we've spoken a lot in the past about how to lose weight. But if I follow my own advice and lose 10 kilos of body fat, where does it all actually go? 10 kilos of fat doesn't just disappear into thin air, right? Well, buckle up, because we're going to find out exactly what happens to that layer of insulation when we diet. The first thing to understand is, why does fat loss actually happen? If you haven't watched any of my videos before, and if you haven't, you're in for a treat, you'll know that fat loss occurs when the body is in a calorie deficit. What does that actually mean? That's when we're eating less energy from food than we're burning in activity. Energy is measured using calories, or in the case of nutrition, kilocalories, but we still say calories just because we're lazy. 1 kilocalorie is the amount of energy needed to heat 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. That might sound pretty obscure, but think of it like this. Everything your body does, from staying warm, pumping your blood, processing information with your brain, moving yourself around, producing sweat, all of that needs energy, and we get that energy from the food we eat. If we take in more food energy than our body needs to fuel right now, our bodies are really good at storing that extra energy for later. And the best way our body does that is by building up stores of body fat. In fact, in a 70 kilogram person with about 15% body fat, they have around 10 kilograms of body fat, and that works out at about 90,000 calories of stored energy, or enough to theoretically last from 35 to 45 days or more. Fat makes up between 92 to 98% of the energy stores in our body, with the rest being stored as glycogen, which is a type of carbohydrate we store in our muscles and liver. Having that store of energy is really useful for when we can't get enough food energy to meet our daily needs. When we haven't eaten in a while and our body needs energy, it dips into our body fat stores. But before I explain how, let's talk about the form that fat is stored in our body. Our body fat stores are made up of cells called adipocytes. Adipose tissue is the scientific term for body fat. And each adipocyte contains one large fat droplet that is made up of millions of molecules of something called triglycerides. A triglyceride is the basic unit of fat and is made up of 3 fatty acids, which are long chains of carbon atoms, attached to a backbone molecule called glycerol, hence triglycerides. I go into a lot more detail on the different types of fatty acids in my video on fish oils, so check it out. When we're low on energy, our body can detect this and needs to get energy from our fat stores, so it sends a signal to our cells to produce enzymes called lipases. Lipases break down triglycerides into fatty acids and glycerol, and these can then pass out of our cells and into the blood. Fat doesn't dissolve well in water, so those fatty acids get transported by carrier molecules called lipoproteins to the parts of the body that need energy. Glycerol is soluble in water and can travel without a transporter protein. The glycerol is mostly used in the liver to produce glucose, and this process is called gluconeogenesis. When glycerol gets converted into glucose, it loses some of the carbon it contains as carbon dioxide. Let's remember that carbon dioxide for later. That glucose that gets produced by gluconeogenesis can be used by special tissues that prefer to use glucose, like the brain and red blood cells. Glucose usually gets burned or oxidized in a process called aerobic respiration. Basically, glucose passes through a number of different steps in the cell where it's broken down by glycolysis and later inside our mitochondria in a process called the Krebs cycle. And as it gets broken down by enzymes, it releases energy along the way. That energy is used to make the famous energy currency of the cell, ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. ATP is what our body uses to fuel all the magic things our bodies are capable of, like running marathons, creating beautiful works of art, and staring at YouTube videos for hours at a time. As glucose is broken down to make ATP, carbon dioxide and water molecules are produced as waste products, and we'll talk about those later too. So what happens to the fatty acids? Well, when the fatty acids get released from our cells, they can go to 2 different places. One of those places is the liver, just like the glycerol. In the liver, fatty acids get converted to something called ketones, which are the substances produced in high amounts when someone doesn't eat carbohydrates, like on a keto diet. Those ketones can't be used for energy in the liver, but can be used by other organs like the heart, the muscles, and even the brain when glucose is low. Just like glucose, ketones can be metabolized by the Krebs cycle in the mitochondria of cells to produce ATP. And along the way, more carbon dioxide is produced as a byproduct. Fatty acids themselves can also be used directly for energy production in tissues like our muscles and especially in our heart, which actually gets up to 90% of its energy from burning fatty acids, with the rest coming from other fuels like glucose and ketones. Fatty acids get transported into our cells' mitochondria and are metabolized for energy in two main steps. The first step is called beta oxidation, and this means that the long fatty acid chain has little pieces broken off 2 carbon atoms at a time. Like I said, fatty acids are chains of carbon atoms with hydrogen atoms attached, and it's easy to imagine the enzyme in our mitochondria working their way along the chain, cutting off 2 carbon atoms at a time. As that happens, some water is also lost as a byproduct. The piece of the chain that gets cut off then enters the Krebs cycle, which we mentioned earlier, and is used to make ATP, and some more carbon dioxide gets produced. So we just described how body fat gets metabolized. First by being broken down into glycerol and fatty acids, and then how the glucose, ketones, or fatty acids are produced and broken down to give us ATP. If you've gotten this far, well done. But you're probably thinking, this guy said he was going to tell us where the body fat actually goes. Well, if you're paying attention, I've kind of already given a hint. You see, I already said our body fat was stored as triglycerides, and that these are made up of molecules of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Through all the process of getting broken down to make energy, I've also mentioned that there are 2 main byproducts, carbon dioxide and water. That's what's happened to your body fat. It's been chemically converted into molecules of carbon dioxide and water. Then you just breathe out carbon dioxide and some water vapor via your lungs, and some of that water gets sweated out or peed out of your system. So when you're in a calorie deficit and you need to dip into your body fat stores for energy, you're either breathing out, sweating out, or peeing out that carbon dioxide and water that used to be your body fat. So now you know, and have a story to bore people with at parties. You're very welcome. As always, if you have any more questions, let me know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe to the Myprotein YouTube channel for more great evidence-based nutrition information.